Hey everybody, Britton here. Welcome back to the Road to Chess Mastery. This is the final game of the 12th tournament, and we are on a 5-game winning streak. We are now playing against Tom, and we are playing with the black pieces. And, well, let's just hope we don't lose our streak, but will we? We will have to see in this game. We see the move d4 from Tom, and knight to f6, c4, g6, and knight to c3. Now, you already know what's going to happen. We're going to get into a classical King's Indian defense position, and I believe this is maybe the second time we're actually getting into one, but this is going to be a bit of a more different approach. I definitely brushed up on my theory, and I was ready at all costs to see if I can come out on top. Bishop g7, knight to f3, castles, and g3. After g3, d6, knight b d7, and e5. I was just very comfortable with this idea, and last time I played this move knight h5, going for f5. It didn't really work out too well, so I'm trying to be a bit more cautious this time around. d5, a5, key move, preventing b4. This is always a good thing to prevent, because now you get the c5 square for your knight, and if they preface it with a move like a3, this can actually backfire, where now knight to c5 and a4 might be coming, where b4 is not possible because after takes, their rook is hanging. So anyways, I saw the move a4, and a4 I think is really not the right approach. Instead, moves like b3 followed by a3 and b4 are a lot more common, but a4 strategically is just, unfortunately, this is very, very bad for white, and I would say realistically this is pretty hard to hold, and it's pretty hard to play as white, because b4 is such a key idea, and c5 specifically, opening up the queen side when you see this type of position, it's necessary. And the reason why c5 is necessary, because when you look at the pawn structure, we can clearly see black's pawn structure in the center is aimed towards the king side, whereas white's is aimed towards the queen side. So this means white has more space on the queen side, and this is quite clear if you just look at this side of the board. We can see white has a lot more space. However, on this side of the board, black has more space. And what we should do about it is, again, black plays on king side, white plays on queen side. So a4, knight to c5, you have to jump in and attack e4. Unfortunately, my opponent blundered a pawn with castles, and knight takes e4. This is a key pawn in the position. This is just over pretty much. So this, realistically, if we play correctly, we should be winning. But it's not so easy, right? It's just a pawn. My opponent is strong, so they definitely will put up some fight. Knight to g5, bishop to d7, just attacking a4, why not? Knight e4, b6. The whole point is, if they take, I'm actually pretty happy with this. I will take, and I have the b file now. And b2, or if they push, then b3, will be a constant weakness in their position. But they didn't take. After b6, they played bishop to g5. I was fine with this. I just played f6. In these positions, you always play f6 or f5 anyways, so f6 just pretty much helps me play f5 after takes, and f5. Now we can see here I'm gaining space, and I should be better. Bishop g2. I played f4. I think nowadays I might have even gone e4. The whole point is, if they go for anything like this, this is just over. I just put my king here, or queen here, go for g5 and f4, and this pawn is always a weakness that they'll have to look after, and this shouldn't really cause too many problems, but f4 also like, it makes sense, reasonable move, just because I want to take on g3, open up the files, and I'm up a pawn, and if I open up files on the side of the board where I have more space, should be advantageous. Rook a3, I took and played queen f6, rook f3, and queen e7. Just kind of random moves. I don't know why I really played queen f6, because rook f3 was going to be played anyways, but the important move here is they played rook a3, but realistically they couldn't even make a random move like this, because if I were to play bishop g4, looks natural, but rook takes f8 and I lose the piece, unfortunately, on g4, because there's a discovery with check. So that would have been nice to see, but unfortunately not well timed. But okay, of course I didn't go for that. Rook a3 was played anyways, and I played rook f7. Now I'm trying to double up, improve all of my pieces, get all your pieces into the game. That's like the key idea in chess, is you need to improve all your pieces. So queen c1, rook a to f8, and bishop to e3, defending f2. I played queen e8. This was a interesting maneuver I made. So queen e8 is just to remaneuver, because I want to trade this bishop off for this bishop. This is a key defender in their position, so I thought if I could just remaneuver to c8 with tempo, then that's perfect, because now bishop h3 is coming. And queen d2, bishop h3, queen e2, queen f5, and then they took, and queen f1. So I'm happy here. I was able to trade off a few more pieces. It's not so easy, but I was happy to take, because even though realistically I probably should have kept queens on the board with a queen to d7, I'm up a pawn, and this is just an endgame, and I'm just comfortable in this position. But my opponent definitely has ideas of rook b1 and b4 now, which are a lot harder to avoid. But my opponent, after rook f5, doesn't really go for this plan immediately. They just go for b3, and they go for the defense of f2, and I think they weren't trying to be ambitious here, which I understand because they're down material, but I also think it might have made sense to just try to be ambitious and go for b4. But they play f4, and this makes things a lot easier for me, because it opens up lines on the side of the board where I have not only more space, but more material. All my pieces and pawns, or at least all my pieces, are on the side of the board, and I have an extra pawn on the side of the board. And I'm very happy to take on f4, because, well, now it's just a 2 versus 1 and equal on the other side. So if we trade off all the pieces, it's an easy king and pawn win. But okay, g5, I thought this was necessary. I'm just threatening to take, simple as that. Rook a to f2, now they're in further pins, and it's a lot easier to pretty much trade everything off. Bishop e7, bishop d4 check, king g6, bishop e3, and I took on f4. After taking on f4, I played bishop g5. Again, if we trade everything off in this position, this is just completely winning. So if they took, I just take on f2. And I just use this pawn. Obviously, this pawn alone in this type of position, if all these other pawns were off the board, then this would be a draw. But since these pawns are here, I can just run over to the side of the board and win these pawns. And this is winning quite easily as well. But bishop g5, of course, they did not go for this. And they tried to keep one piece on the board. And I think this was the right approach because, well, these are all on dark squares, so there is something to attack. So I think that was definitely what should have been done here. But again, this should be winning. King f3, h5. Now all I'm doing is pushing this pawn as far up the board as possible. And now after h2, we can see they are stuck in the corner. They can never trade. They can never take this pawn if I leave my bishop here. And that's key because since they can't take, that means I can just run my king up. And that also means that this piece is limited to the side of the board. However, it's not so simple. King e4, b4, and I made a blunder here. I should have just taken. After takes, bishop takes, king d4. This is just winning. a5, takes. Oh no, did I just blunder again? Yeah, I just blundered again. My bad. Bishop d4, sorry. Bishop d4. I should be winning. It's a bit complex, but bishop d4. Or even just promote, but after bishop d4, then after this, then I have bishop to b6. And that's the point, where now I go up and win the pawn. Okay, just wanted to make sure. But after king e4, b4, and king d3, I thought, okay, I can just attack their bishop. And then take on c4. I should be better here. But they took on a5. And this is why you have to be very careful, especially in endgames. when you're playing your opponents, because they are going to do everything they can to draw the game or even win the game. And here, this draws on the spot. And the reason why I say it draws on the spot is because after takes, bishop takes a5 and king takes d4, takes c7, king takes d5. I was very surprised here that they did not take on d6, because the second they take on d6, it's a draw. After I take, there's no way to force this king out of the corner. I could even win this pawn, or I have a bunch of dark squared bishops. It doesn't matter because I can't force them out of the h1 corner. They just maneuver between these two squares. However, if I had a light squared bishop, different story, because it would be the right corner. But my opponent played a5, king c6, and bishop b6. And here I was thinking, okay, I was just given a golden opportunity. I'm now no longer drawing this game, possibly, and I can play d5. There's a lot of complexities here, but again, this does improve my chances quite a bit. And now I actually have a chance to win the game, because if I can promote this pawn, then, well, the game's won. So it'll take a lot of conversion, but there's hope, whereas before there wasn't. Bishop to f2, king b7. I don't know if king b7 was perfect. Maybe king b5 was better, but realistically they're both the same. Bishop c5, bishop c7, bishop to b4, king to a6, and now you see my idea here. We're after bishop to d2. I didn't play it yet. I play king to b5, but I have a very nasty idea. Bishop c3, bishop f4. I'm just trying to wait. I don't know if waiting was really so great, but the whole point is I have this idea of bishop, well, d4 first, sorry, and d3. This was necessary, but if I don't play this, then the idea doesn't work, because then they can just take. But after this, king h1, they're just maneuvering, but now we have the winning idea here. I think at some point I might have actually blundered and drawn. Here, I just want to make sure that wasn't the case. Bishop c3. No, it all checks out. So I know that there was some points where it was just like draw, win, but it wasn't here. Bishop takes a5, bishop f4. Well, now they can take the h2 pawn. How is this winning? Bishop c7. Great move. And the whole point is now they have to move back to this diagonal, and I can just run my king up and promote the pawn. So again, if they take either on c7 or on h2, I just push, and this is just a clear win. And king takes h2, funny move, just d2, because the bishop is pinned to their king. So I just wanted to point that out, even though you should realistically just take and then promote. I just thought that was funny to mention. Okay, bishop d2, and now here comes the difficult part. We need to run around, and we need to get in front of the pawn. And bishop b4, bishop b5, and now we see the idea. Bishop c3 is the threat, and this pawn doesn't matter anymore, but it did help because the king was unable to get to the defense. Bishop b1 and bishop to c3. And my opponent resigned here because now the pawn is just promoting. However, it was important to mention there were some obvious mistakes here, especially playing king to d3 was definitely not a smart move. Instead, just taking, or after takes, this bishop c5. Even then, I still blundered. Nowadays, after having a lot more experience, we're bishop d4, and now I can go in and take the pawns, and I can play a move like bishop to b6 after a5. Because the second I lose these two pawns is the second that, well, I'm losing, or not losing, sorry, I'm drawing, because I can't force a promotion with this pawn, with this bishop, at least. The curse of the h-pawn, as they say. But anyways, now we have a 6-game streak. We have won 6 games in a row. So it's a good feeling. It's definitely, boosts the ego a little bit, but that's also very, very harmful. You need to make sure you're in check when you're playing your games. But this was an interesting win. I don't think I should have won this one. I should have drawn, because I did mess up so bad in the end game, which is surprising because that's usually where I've been doing a lot better, even at this point. So I was a bit frustrated with myself, and I remember studying this endgame a ton afterwards, just to make sure I wouldn't fall into similar issues. But even then, a few years later, of not practicing at all, I fall into it right again. So maybe I need to practice it. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in tournament number 13. We finally won our first tournament, so that's a nice feeling, and I'll see you guys in tournament 13. Have a good one.